So today, we're going to talk about a little known anime called Death Note. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe? Anyways, last week I finally got around to watching the show for the very first time, and boy was I hooked through and through. I finished the whole thing in less than a week. There's so many great things that stuck out to me that I think are really cool and worth talking about. But one thing that quickly stood out to me was the opening themes and visuals. I'm sure you all experienced this, but I made about halfway through the show and clicked on the next episode, not thinking much, when my ears were suddenly absolutely attacked by this. The more I watched, the more I realized the openings mirrored where Light was in his arc and where he was going. So let's talk about it. Oh, and spoiler warning, by the way, for both Death Note as well as some Gothic fiction, so watch out for that. Odds are pretty good you're new to the channel. If you are and you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and liking the video. Both actions would be extremely helpful. Also let me know if you'd like to see more Death Note videos in the future. Now, back to the video. Alright, so let's start with the first opening. The World by Nightmare. Which rocks, by the way. It's absolutely awesome. This theme song plays from episodes 1 to 19. This song is a haunting punk rock tune that is perfectly complemented by the Gothic visuals. The Gothic imagery is very effective when telling this part of Light's arc because of both the religious aspect as well as showing his dark side becoming more and more twisted. The Goths were known for their more dark and twisted stories that inspired authors such as Edgar Allan Poe and Brian... I don't know how you say it. Is it Brian Stroker? Or Brain Stroker? But anyways, the guy who wrote Dracula. At the same time, once they were converted to Christianity in the Middle Ages, they became devout with the rest of Europe. Light at this point is on a quest, a sacred journey to become the god of the new world in his eyes. He's arrogant, but very calculated and incredibly intelligent, and has faith that what Ryuk blessed him with will make this dream a reality. Because of his state of mind, much of the opening is filled with religious symbols and parodies, such as the cross when the title card plays, the apple, the innocent detective and his wife being Light's first non-criminal killings, mirroring a statue of Christ and Mary, Ryuk blessing him with the apple, which is symbolic of the Death Note and mirrors the classic pain of God reaching down to Adam, Light reaching out to Misa to save her, and the final shot in particular of Light behind a fallen angel, or maybe the angel of death, holding the Death Note and a quill. The final shot in particular is really how Light sees himself for the first 19 episodes. The perfect and only person who can become god of the new world. Going back to the Gothic art style of the intro, and honestly a lot of the show, I realized that a lot of Light's arc and character can be found in Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction is known for its emphasis on shadows, dealings with supernatural forces, being quite melodramatic, curses that hint to tragic ends, and anti-hero protagonists. And that sound familiar? This shows that not only is the art style awesome and adds a lot to Death Note, but also reflects Light's character really well. Alright, one more thing about Gothic fiction before we move on to the second opening. The anti-hero, or even a villain, being a main character that was heavily inspired by an epic written before the Gothic literature period, but inspired much of it, was called Paradise Lost by John Milton. The reason I bring this up is Satan being in the background of this final shot might make more sense than the Angel of Death, thanks to the context of Paradise Lost. In Paradise Lost, Satan is the protagonist, and at the beginning is shown to be more of a sympathetic anti-hero who is courageous, ambitious, and a good leader, and really makes his opinions known. As the story goes, his goal is to challenge God and to either make heaven hell or hell heaven. There's a famous quote from the epic where Satan says, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." As the story goes, he becomes less and less of the hero of the story, and it becomes more and more clear that he's fallen. Just like Light, pride was his downfall, and at the end of the epic, we see how he will eventually fail against God in the end. If there weren't enough parallels to Light already, Lucifer in Latin means light bringer. Let's let that sink in. A couple more quick things before we move on to the second opening. Light and L have a couple face-offs to represent their rivalry and battle of wits. Light walking on a narrow beam high in the air to me is showing his balancing act of trying to hide that he's Kira and avoid being caught, while also showing how he sees himself as above others and he only starts killing in this opening after he's taken a bite out of the apple, aka written in the Death Note. I'm sure there's a lot more that I missed, but those were the big things that stood out to me and I found the most interesting. Let me know in the comments if I missed something cool. So the second opening has a slightly different vibe for sure. At first, I wasn't a big fan of the song and didn't know what to think of the trippy visuals, but since then they've really grown on me. This intro starts on episode 20 and goes all the way to the end of the series. It starts partway through the Yotsuba arc where L is still around, yet doesn't take L out of the theme song once he is not. And this is because L is probably the most important person to Light's arc and what he becomes. Once Light kills L, Light A really starts to lose it and gets even cockier and therefore sloppier. And B, L is still his enemy through Mello and Nier as well as the task force. Because this is when Light really starts to descend into madness, the music, visuals, and editing perfectly reflect that. Gone is the haunting rock song, and instead we're greeted with a frantic and increasingly chaotic death metal song called What's Up People by Maximum the Hormone. Gone is the gothic and religious imagery, and instead we see bright and almost dreamlike backgrounds. Unlike in the first intro where the task force was confused, instead we see them armed and firing shots, showing that things are starting to close in on Light a bit. Later we see him on a building, still seeing killing as a sacrifice worth making and himself above others. He starts walking around and we see him surrounded by people to use and people surrounding him wherever he goes as the music intensifies, until he stops an array of light in front of Nier. This to me is ironic because it almost seems to say that Nier's eyes are open and he sees light in his true light. Then the music just goes nuts, and we see what Light, or Kira, truly became. This isn't elegant or majestic, downright insane, violent, and frankly, psychotic.
Right. I am Kira.
It shows blue roses, which blue in the anime seems to represent good. The blue roses get blood splattered on them, kind of showing how Light may have started as a blue rose, but now he's covered in blood. Then we see a mirror crack in front of his face representing his mind breaking, and him standing in a desolate wasteland with bones and blood. You know, super uplifting stuff. But it really mirrors Light's mental state and arc really well. As a quick bonus, I thought the second outro was insanely cool as well, showing the evil and determination of Light and how he doesn't fit with society anymore. It also maintains the theme of red representing when he's acting as Kira, and trippy visuals of the second opening as well. I especially love the shots of him here. Here he is once again doing a religious pose, mirroring Jesus, with his shirt off, arms outstretched, that kind of thing. However, unlike Jesus, who ascends up in those kind of pictures, Light is falling down, showing how he's fallen morally and mentally, and showing how he's not God after all, as well as foreshadowing his eventual end. Well, there you have it. That's the gist of what I got out of the Death Note openings. Let me know what you got out of them, or even liked or disliked about them in the comments below. Also, if you liked the video, please subscribe, like, and share the video. It would be a massive help. And with that, I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. Thanks for watching.